And let me just assure our nominees first, thank you for your willingness to serve. It's a challenge. Public service is not easy, and you have, in many cases, devoted your entire careers to public service. So we thank you very much for your willingness, and we thank your families. I think we see some of your families in the front row. If not, we have some very young people who are here. But we thank you and your families because we know it's a family sacrifice to serve in the public domain. And let me also just point out the obvious. This hearing is very important, and we'll be asking you some questions at this hearing. There'll be some questions for the record that we'll ask you to respond to. Our staffs have already done a lot of vetting in regards to your nomination. So it's a whole process. And I just want to explain that for particularly the young people that are here. There's a whole process that we go through in regards to vetting nominees and to the Senate confirmation of nominees. So this is one part of it. The hearing is a very important part of it. But I want to just acknowledge why there may not be as many senators here today as we normally have. That speaks to two things. First, it speaks to the quality of the people who are nominated. They are outstanding, and we recognize that. And to the conflicts on our schedule today as a result of the supplemental appropriation bills that are being considered as this hearing is taking place. We do have a scheduled vote for a little later this afternoon. And there's negotiations going on as to how that vote will take place, et cetera. So that's the reasons why you might not see the type of normal participation at this hearing. It's a reflection, I think, of the quality, the positive quality of our nominees as well as the conflicts that are on the schedule today. But we wanted to be able to move these nominees forward. So again, thank you for your cooperation. I'm going to start with the Department's Bureau of Democracy, Human Rights, and Labor, DRL. Whether you're generals from Miramar or the Kremlin in Moscow, repression is on the rise. Attacks against human rights defenders are up across the globe. Coups and democratic backsliding threatens progress on every continent. In Africa, instability now stretches from the Red Sea to the Atlantic. Behind all of this is the cancer of corruption that undermines the rule of law, good governance, threatening democratic institutions and human rights. That is why we need an assistant secretary who will be there, a powerful voice for democratic values and human rights. The DRL Bureau has not had a Senate-confirmed leader for more than 3 years. That's unacceptable. We need to have a confirmed person at DRL. Why? Because it's our voice in regards to our values. And there's a lot of areas that the State Department needs to concentrate on as it deals with diplomacy globally. We recognize that. Our missions have a lot of important tasks that they have to take on. But we need someone to advocate for our values at the highest levels of the department. And that requires us to have a confirmed person in that position. Dr. Rand, if confirmed, I hope you will commit to be a strong voice to protect and advance American values. That means being a champion on DRL's global democracy programs. That means raising staff morale and strengthening the reach of the Bureau in policy discussions in the department and across the interagency deliberations. That means harnessing the global Magnitsky Human Rights Accountability Act to advance human rights agenda. I wrote the Magnitsky Act to honor a young lawyer in Russia who discovered corruption. He reported it to the authorities, so they arrested him, they tortured him, and he died in a Russian prison. I hope you will commit to strengthening the use of global Magnitsky provisions if you are confirmed. More recently, in December, a new law was enacted as part of the State Department's Authorization Act. It mandates that the administration submit to Congress reports on how the governments of the world are fulfilling their obligations to battle against corruption in all forms, the Combating Global Corruption Act. To ensure this is done well, I expect DRL will have to play a very, very important role because it's not going to be embraced by every mission around that we have around the world. It's going to be your responsibility, if confirmed, to make sure that that law is implemented as Congress has intended it to be. Now let me turn to Ms. Welton. and Timor-Leste earned its independence after centuries of colonial rule under Dutch and then Indonesian governments. Even today, we see senior figures rising to power in Indonesia that threatens to drag up nations' painful past. So whether it's being a partner to their energy transition or supporting our Peace Corps volunteers on the ground, the United States has the obligation to support the youngest country in Asia's democratic ambitions. Finally, I want to welcome Mr. Lang, who is the nominee to lead the Coordination for International Communications and Information Policy at the State Department. Not many people truly understand the intricacies of this position, but it's incredibly important. That is because part of your job will be to continue to build and strengthen our cybersecurity policies, an area where the world's autocratic regimes have shown increasing interest. So I hope you will commit to making human rights and the protection of democratic institutions one of your priorities. I look forward to hearing from all of you about that. And without objection, I'm going to ask consent to include in the record a statement from Senator Klobuchar in support of Mr. Lang. She had hoped to be here, but she's engaged in some other activities, but she wanted me to make sure that I express her strong support for your nomination and include her comments in our record. With that, we're going to now turn to our witnesses. First, Dr. Rand, who currently serves as a Distinguished Resident Fellow in Strategic Affairs at Georgetown University's Institute for Study of Diplomacy and as a lecturer at Princeton School of Public and International Affairs. Dr. Rand has spent the past 2 decades in public service, including most recently as the Director of the Office of Foreign Assistance at the Department of State. Dr. Rand, you'll be followed by Ms. Welton, who serves as the Acting Deputy Assistant Secretary for Programs and Operations in the Bureau of Political and Military Affairs. She previously served as the lead negotiator for bilateral defense agreements that involve access to status protection and burden sharing. With more than 25 years of experience in foreign service, including in Kabul, Helsinki, and I understand you're fluent in several languages, including Korean, Indonesian, German, and Sundari, and Finnish. So you far exceed my capacity as I struggle to be able to speak in English. So thank you very much for your capacities that are desperately needed at the State Department. And then Mr. Lang has been the Deputy Assistant Secretary for International Information and Communication Policy since November 2022. Previously he served as the Minister Counselor for Economic Affairs at the U.S. Embassy, Tokyo, and the Bureau of Economic and Business Affairs Office of the International Communications and Information Policy as Director of both the Office of Multilateral Affairs and the Office of Bilateral and Regional Affairs. He served in Mexico City. He's been a senior analyst, the U.S. Trade Representative in the Office of Japan, Korea, and APAC Affairs. So he served in China and Taipei, which is an interesting combination that you have, which I think will serve us well in those capacities. So let's start first with Dr. Rand. Your full statements will be made part of our record. We ask that you try to summarize your comments in about 5 minutes.